This is Adida's consideration of the self-contraction. My own consideration was this: God, truth, or happiness, whatever that is altogether, must necessarily be that which is always already the case. Therefore, I observed that the felt dilemma and the urge to seek are simply the absurd confession that God, truth, or happiness is absent now. And I observed further that the signs of dilemma and seeking are not a program for the actual future realization of God, truth, or happiness, but they are merely a means for preventing present realization of God, truth, or happiness. The feeling of dilemma and the urge to seek are actually the evidence of a disease, which is the conditional or psychophysical self in its chronic contraction upon itself and in its symptomatic non-realization of God, truth, or happiness. Indeed, it became clear to me that the ego, in inverted commas, or the conventional I, is not an entity or an independent and static thing of being, but the ego, or the conventional I, is the chronic and total psychophysical activity of self-contraction, always associated with concrete results in the psyche, mind, emotion, body, and their relations. And the self-contraction can always be located in any moment in feeling as fear, anxiety, stress, and all other kinds of reactive emotions and blocks in the flow of the natural bodily energy in the circle of the body-mind. The self-contraction is the complex limit on natural bodily energy, and in the case of any degree of spiritual awakening, on the spirit energy in the circle of the body-mind. Therefore, the self-contraction is ultimately a complex limit on the inherent and self-existing spiritual radiance of transcendental and ultimately divine being. And perfect freedom, or inherent happiness, or inherently most perfect God realization, is a matter of direct, or inherent, or native, and inherently most perfect identification with the self-existing and self-radiant condition of transcendental and inherently spiritual divine being, or consciousness itself, which identification is allowed only by present or progressive transcendence of the ego act of self-contraction. The self-contraction is unnecessary. The self-contraction is without ultimate necessity and therefore only apparently being added to existence itself in reaction to cosmic nature or to apparent conditional existence. The self-contraction originally coincides with and effectively perpetuates the apparition of cosmic nature itself and the presumption that existence itself is conditional or merely apparent. Therefore, the self-contraction is originally and also in effect or conditionally unnatural because it superimposes on the transcendental and inherently spiritual self or consciousness itself a false view of both cosmic nature or conditional reality and the divine or the most priorly real self-condition and source condition. When what is unnecessarily superimposed on reality is released, what stands or remains is the obvious, as the obvious is necessarily reality or the real condition itself. That is to say, whatever is always already the case authenticates itself directly, inherently, obviously, and perfectly. Therefore, self-transcendence necessarily reveals or allows the revelation of the transcendental and inherently spiritual self-condition and source condition as the self-authenticating or inherently and obviously real and true and most prior or necessarily divine reality and truth. The heart-awakened insight was instantly liberating, and it became the basis for a progressive revelation of God, or reality, truth, and happiness. The insight itself, or the unique and inherently liberating understanding reawakened at the heart, directly coincided or arose simultaneously with a practice that was thereafter to be the most basic characteristic of the way of my life, and which was to reawaken full and most ultimate realization. That practice had two primary aspects. The first was profound submission of attention and all the energies of the body-mind to observe, feel, and feel beyond the self-contraction. And the second, which coincided with the first and ultimately superseded it, was direct communion and ultimately inherent identification with the native or prior condition that is simply and directly obvious when the self-contraction is transcended or no longer effective as a mechanism of dissociation from what is always already the case. I observed that the sense or feeling of absence, or the sense or feeling of the non-presence of God, or the sense or feeling of separation from God, truth, happiness, or what cannot even be described, is not evidence of the real absence of God, truth, happiness, or the indescribable, but it is clear evidence that the conditional self is contracting or actively separating from what simply, merely, or really is. I named this disease, or the diseased self, narcissus, because of the likeness between this self-program and the ancient myth of Narcissus. And I became attentive in every moment to this feeling of absence, of separateness, of dilemma, and the urge to seek. Remarkably, in every moment of such observation, I felt the non-necessity as well as the deluding or binding effect of the self-contraction, so that a spontaneous release occurred in every such moment. That is to say, I observed that it was unnecessary to presume or suffer or be motivated by the self-contraction in any moment of my direct observation of it. And in that observation, a deep, spontaneous response of self-release was awakened. And whenever that release of self-contraction occurred, that which is always already the case, previous and most prior to self-contraction, stood out as the obvious. Over time, what is previous and most prior to self-contraction was revealed more and more profoundly, and as that revelation increased, there was also the spontaneous and otherwise progressive unfolding of the many extraordinary phenomena that are characteristic of each of the stages of life. The process of that revelation by stages was not developed only on the basis of insight or self-understanding and spontaneous self-transcendence, or what I call the conscious process, but it was equally associated with a developing response to what was being revealed. Thus, it also invoked what I call seeing, or fullest and spiritually activated emotional and total psychophysical conversion to true and truly responsible conductivity of the by grace revealed spirit power, and what I call divine ignorance, or spontaneous identification with the inherent love bliss of native or divine being, whenever the psychophysical presumption of knowledge, or I know what this or that is, was effortlessly released. What is always and already is revealed only when the self-contraction is not effective. It is revealed to be self-radiant, or inherently spiritual and transcendental, or self-existing being, God, truth, or happiness. Any and every conditionally manifested I always already inheres in that one, both at the level of being or consciousness itself, and at the level of every apparent or conditionally manifested psychophysical function, process, or state. Even the body-mind is only an apparent modification of that divine self-radiance in which I am. When this realization was most perfectly reawakened in my own case, all beings, this world, and all kinds of other worlds were revealed in that same one, inhering in that same one, and appearing as apparent modifications of that same one. Da.